Hey guys, this is Clinton Jeff from unleashthephones.com, and this is our quick review of the Sony Xperia Z2. The Xperia Z2 was announced just this year at Mobile World Congress in February, and as you can see, it looks a lot like the Sony Xperia Z1. Except that it has slight design differences. It also features a much faster processor, 3 GB of RAM, same camera though, and same waterproof nature. But all in all, it's a really interesting phone. Here's what we think about it. Starting with design, as you'd expect from a Sony flagship, the Xperia Z2 is mostly made out of glass at the front with a solid metal frame around it. And as you can see, we have the beautiful purple color version for review. A drawback to the glass though is that it does catch fingerprints, so I apologize for any fingerprints you see on this phone right now. So in terms of design, it really is quite nice, though if you have seen previous Sony Xperia phones, you probably might not find the design as new or as interesting as it actually is, but it really is a nice design. It might appear to look exactly the same as the Xperia Z1, but the metal frame now has a three-tone finish. On the black Xperia Z2, the flat slides of the frame are silver in color, while the edges are done in black and a very deep gray. But on our purple unit, you'll see that the edges are all silver. So it does depend on the unit color that you choose. Personally, I do like the purple color version better because I think it looks more cool. But you also get the Xperia Z2 in black and white. When we first saw the Xperia Z, we thought it kind of looked a lot like the iPhone 4. But 2 devices later, Sony's omni-balanced design has really matured into a range of very appealing and distinctive devices that are very recognizable as Sony phones. But that being said, the Xperia Z2 is still a pretty big phone, just like its predecessors. It measures 146 by 73 by 8 millimeters, so it's slightly taller than the Xperia Z1, but at the same time it's also thinner and narrower. Now, tall phones are hard to use, but wide phones are even harder to use, so I'm happy that Sony cut down on the width, so it is slightly narrow. You can see that the bezels are also slightly smaller than with the Z1. This means it's a lot more usable than the Z1, and you can't exactly reach all corners of the screen. Some of you might feel like it's still too large with its bezels at the top and bottom of the screen, but at least it's not too heavy this time. It's 163 grams, and there's a reason why the Xperia Z2 is this large though. Most of it is the large screen, which we'll talk about in a sec, but there's also a 3200 mAh battery at the back. But considering it has the latest specs and is waterproof and dustproof, I think the size is okay. The display on the Xperia Z2 is a huge upgrade over previous Xperias. It's a huge upgrade over the Xperia Z or the Xperia Z1 before it. Sony's finally decided to use an IPS display, and as such the Z2 has an excellent screen. Viewing angles are on par with the competition, they're pretty good. It's really a no compromise display, and I'm kind of relieved that you no longer have to make up any excuses for the quality of a screen on Sony's phones. The 5.2-inch 1080p display has a pixel density of 424 ppi, which is more than enough that you can make out that there's no jagged edges on text, and everything looks really clean and nice, very crisp as well. Sony also has a lot of technology on the screen. There's something called the Triluminos display technology that features something called live color LEDs, which basically uses blue LEDs in combination with red and green phosphor and color filters to achieve better red and green colors on the display. This is supposed to result in images that really pop and brighter color as well, deeper blacks, but it does definitely result in nice crisp pictures that don't exactly look true to life, but they do look more saturated with vibrant saturated colors. Just to show you, for example, this nice little picture taken with the Z2's camera, it does look very nice and saturated. You can see that the greens really pop and the colors really pop on this image. Sony also has something called their X Reality Image Enhancement feature, which tweaks sharpness, contrast and colors to make images and videos basically pop more on that screen. Sure, it does sacrifice color accuracy, but it definitely makes images and videos look really nice. Taking this outdoors, the image quality is okay. It's good enough that you can comfortably use the camera, keep up with Twitter, check an email maybe, or just check the internet and see what going on. But that being said, don't expect to read an entire book outdoors. So moving on from the screen, above the screen you have a 2 megapixel front facing camera and the Sony branding right over there. Below the screen you will see that there are no capacitive buttons because the Sony Xperia Z2 uses on-screen buttons, and we definitely like that. You'll also notice that there are these front-facing speakers. The earpiece is also a speaker, and it's a lot like HTC's boom sound speakers, but the sound quality isn't quite as loud as HTC's boom sound speakers. It's still much better than the speakers on the Xperia Z and the Xperia Z Ultra. The sound quality is way richer in the speaker on the Xperia Z1, for example, and it's loud enough that you will definitely hear any ringtones or music comfortably. For example, watching a video on this is quite nice because you can actually hear what's going on in the video. There's also one very cool thing about at the front. There's a notification light that's built into the top earpiece. I don't have a notification right now, so I can't show it to you, but it actually looks very cool when it's lit up and when you get a notification. Coming to the rest of the phone, most of the key elements lie in the aforementioned metal frame. At the top you'll find the usual 3.5mm audio jack right over there, and you'll see a tiny pinhole right over there for the noise cancelling microphone. On the left side you'll see Sony's gigantic proprietary magnetic dock connector and an inlet for a lanyard cable. I love that Sony has included a lanyard cable in it. This means you can put a wrist strap and feel more secure when holding the phone. Right over here you also see this plastic flap, which you will have to close if you want the Sony Xperia Z2 to stay waterproof. That has a slot for your SIM card and a micro USB charging and connectivity port. This also means that you'll be opening this flap a lot. Previously we said that we had concerns for the flaps on Sony's phones, but after using an Xperia Z and Xperia Z Ultra for over a year, these flaps still stay secure, so it's not really that much of a problem, but you still want to take care when you're opening them and closing them. Coming to the bottom, you will see just these 3 dots. I'm not exactly sure what these 3 dots are for, but on this side, on the right side, you'll see a dedicated camera key, which is 2-stage, so you can half press it to focus, press it harder to take a picture. You find the volume keys, the very pronounced screen lock and power key, which is really nice, and you'll see another flap, this time for the micro SD card, which you can get to right by opening up the flap. Like I said, the Sony Xperia Z2 is IP58 certified, which means it's pretty much completely waterproof. You can actually go swimming with it, and because it has a dedicated camera key, you can actually use the camera underwater, since you can't use the touchscreen when you're underwater. Waterproof phone comes in really useful in some scenarios, like for example if you live by the beach or you just want to have fun with your friends when you're going to the swimming pool. So I definitely like that Sony has stuck to their waterproof features on all of their flagship phones. And I should also say that if you live in a town or city where it rains a lot, the Xperia Z2 is a very nice phone to have. Alright, moving on to the back, there's a 20 megapixel G-lens camera right over there with a tiny LED flash below it, and you'll see that Sony has an NFC sticker right over there. Well, not really a sticker, more like an NFC mark, just to let you know where the NFC is when you're tapping this against other NFC devices. There's Sony branding proudly located in the center, and towards the bottom we'll see the Xperia branding right over there. Little excessive on the branding, but not too bad. At the end of the day, the Sony Xperia Z2 is a beautiful looking phone. I definitely think it's one of the best looking phones out there, even though it kind of uses the same design as the Xperia Z, Z Ultra and Z1. I feel like this is a really good looking phone that will definitely be noticed in your hand, especially if you get the purple version instead of the white and black version. And aside from being well designed, it's also really premium in feeling. It feels like an expensive phone. The build quality is really good. That being said, we all know that glass is rather delicate, so you might want to buy a case for it if you are clumsy. If you're not too clumsy, then hey, it's a good phone to use and a good phone to show off. Coming to hardware, the Xperia Z2 is powered by the latest Qualcomm Snapdragon processor, the Snapdragon 801. It's a quad-core 2.3 GHz Krait 400 CPU accompanied by Adreno 330 GPU and 3 GB of RAM. As you can see, performance is freaking fast. Everything is really quick, and you see no lag anywhere when you're opening up apps or when you're opening up album apps or whatever you need to open up. It all opens up really quickly. Everything works just nice and fast on. There's no lag whatsoever, so that's really appreciated. There's no occasional choppiness like we saw on the Galaxy S5 It's not quite as fast as the HTC One though. I feel like the HTC One feels faster, but that might be because its touchscreen latency is the lowest in the world right now. In terms of benchmarks, the benchmark results are pretty good. They're very comparable to the likes of the Galaxy S5 and the HTC One. We have benchmark results posted over on the site, so you can check out unleashedphones.com for a better idea of those benchmark results. Apart from that, there's 16 GB of onboard memory, which isn't too much for a flagship phone, but at least you have a micro SD card slot. You also have LTE 4G, HSPA Plus, and Wi-Fi, as well as Bluetooth 4.0, DLNA, and NFC as well, along with MHL support as well. That being said, while the HTC One and Samsung Galaxy S5 and even the LG G2 all have infrared transmitters, the Sony Xperia Z2 does not have an IR blaster anywhere on it. That's a bit of a strange decision, seeing as how Sony does have an IR blaster on their Xperia Tablet Z. Alright, and coming to software, the Sony Xperia Z2 runs the latest version of Android right now. That's Android 4.4 KitKat with Sony's UI on top of it. Now, Sony's UI hasn't really changed that much since we've seen it on the Z1. You still have a home screen that you can edit by swiping out right over there. You have themes that you can choose from that change the look of the entire UI, and you have apps and wallpapers that you can change and widgets that you can add. So that's pretty much your usual Android deal. You also have an app drawer, which is a list of all of your apps. Sony also does this sidebar thing where you can swipe at the side to go into uninstall mode to remove apps right from the screen, or to sort your apps alphabetically or according to most used, or just your own order or installed apps, for example. There's also a shortcut to the Play Store right over there. You'll also notice that Sony's drop-down bar has changed, and you now have quick settings as a different tab. You can of course change your quick settings and see which ones you want listed. Moving on, the contacts and dialer app all work pretty much the same as usual. Sony's messaging app is really simple to use and looks very simple as well. It also has support for glide typing, that you can just glide and type something right over there. So that's pretty cool as well. It works really well and it's very comfortable to type on this huge screen, and of course in landscape mode it gets better. Moving on to organization, Sony has a whole bunch of organizing apps installed, like the calculator app or the default calendar app, or even the Sony's clock app, which has world time, a timer, a stopwatch, and alarms all built into it. There's also a Notes app which syncs with Evernote as well. So pretty much exactly the same as the Xperia Z1 in that regard. There's also Sony's small apps. Now this is a very cool little feature where you have access to a whole bunch of tiny little apps that run in a tiny window. You can, for example, open up a mini browser or a calculator, for example, and do other things underneath. This hasn't really come in useful to me, but I know a lot of people that actually do like that feature, and you get to it right by hitting the multitasking button right over there. You can also customize what you want to appear over here. You could, for example, put a timer here, a touch block, a calculator shortcut, or a shortcut to the browser, or active clip, for example, or just a calculator or bookmarks. Coming to web browsing, the web browser works well enough, no complaints as such. Everything looks really nice on that huge screen, and pages, as you can see, load up really quickly, no complaints at all. Okay, and coming to multimedia, the Sony Xperia Z2 is pretty great for multimedia. I'm going to talk about the camera in a second, but first let's just talk about audio. You have access to Sony's store, so you can download music from there. You have front-facing speakers that are pretty good. They get pretty loud, as you can see, and the Walkman app is just beautiful to use and looks just great. It's one of the best music UIs that I've seen so far. The album app also works really well, as you can see, and you can swipe or pinch to increase the size of how many images you want to see listed there. That's pretty cool. The Movies app is also really nice. It actually shows you a nice little preview up top of all the various videos you have running, and playing a video is as easy as just tapping it, and there you go. So that's pretty cool. No complaints there as such. I actually think the Sony Xperia Z2 does a great job at multimedia, especially because of the front-facing speakers, which sound a lot louder than previous Xperia phones. Moving on to the camera, like its predecessor, the Sony Xperia Z2 comes with a 20 megapixel G lens camera with a 1 by 2.3 inch sensor. The sensor is the most interesting part to me personally, as it's much larger than the one on other phones like the HTC One, for example, or even the iPhone 5s, which both have 1 by 3 inch sensors, while the Galaxy S5 has a 1 by 2.6 inch sensor. The only thing bigger than this sensor actually is the one on the Nokia Lumia 1020. Because of the large sensor, pixels have a very decent 1.1 micron size, which produces a lot more detail in the images. The G lens camera also has a very wide f2.0 aperture, which works great in low light conditions, allowing you to gather way more light than usual. The wide angle 27mm lens is also just icing on the cake over here, letting you capture a much larger scene. As you can see, the camera UI is very easy to use, especially if you stick to Sony's Superior mode, which is what we're using right now. Superior Auto mode automatically picks a setting for you depending on what you're shooting, and most of the times it's actually correct. It's mostly accurate most of the time, but in case you want to switch it up, you can go to manual mode, where you can tweak more settings and change a lot more options and tweak a lot more things. Manual mode also has different scene modes that you can use. This comes in useful if you really want to tweak every single detail of the picture you're about to take. Sony's camera app also has camera modes, which are basically kind of like the lenses from Windows Phone, wherein you can install an app to give it more capabilities. For example, you can record 4K video. You also have time shift video, which allows you to record high frame rate videos and apply slow motion effects just like the iPhone 5s. There's background defocus, which basically allows you to blur the background around a picture. It works kind of well. There's AR effect, which kind of works if you are in the open. It won't work over here because the subject is too close, but it allows you to do fun stuff, like for example have a dinosaur walking around your backyard or stuff like that. And there's other stuff like that. There's also sweep panorama, and there's social live, where you can live stream a video right from your Sony phone to Facebook. So that's cool. It allows your Sony Xperia Z2 to have more functionality. Now, we've already spoken in length about the Z2's camera on unleashthephones.com, so you can check out our posts on the blog for a better idea. We've really covered every aspect of it, so do check out that post for camera samples and for video samples as well of the Xperia Z2. From my experience with the Z2, image quality was mostly fantastic. Color reproduction is natural, and you have just the right amount of contrast and vibrancy. All of the pictures I've taken have turned out really nice with this. There's plenty of detail, as you can see. Really, I have no complaints as such. It does a great job of handling dynamic range as well. So the lighter areas and darker areas are all well featured in the same image. For example, I have a really good example of a picture taken in daytime, and you can see that the clouds are lit up right over there, and you can see the building as well. That's really a good shot. It handled dynamic range really well. Exposure is also great. In indoor images, results can be slightly soft, as you can see over here in this picture of me, for example, with the light, with the tube light at the back. But all in all, it's really not too bad at all. There's almost no noise, and the LED flash does a pretty good job of lighting up small scenes and portrait pictures. Of course, a xenon flash would have been better, but considering how slim the phone is, it's not too bad that there's a LED flash out here. Just so you know, the Superior Auto mode on the camera takes pictures in 8 megapixels, kind of in the same way that the Nokia's PureView technology works on their Lumia phones. You can shoot in full 20 megapixel mode with the manual setting, but like I said, we've detailed this out on the blog, so do check out our blog post for a better idea of the camera. There's a lot to know about this camera, so you're gonna definitely want to check out our blog post for Coming to video, the Xperia Z2 can record 1080p HD, and it does that really well. There's no optical image stabilization, but it does a really good job. You can also record 4K resolution video, but that being said, the phone can heat up really bad when you're recording 4K video, so you don't want to take videos in 4K longer than maybe 5 minutes at a stretch. Moving on to call quality. The call quality in the Z2 is surprisingly average for a high-end phone. I kind of wish call quality was better. That being said, folks on the other end of the call said that they heard our voices loud and clear thanks to the built-in noise cancellation, as you can see from the various microphones around the phone. Moving on to battery life, the Xperia Z2 has a surprisingly good battery. It has a 3200 mAh battery, as I said before, and it can easily last to an entire day's worth of usage. Whether you're an LTE 4G or using 3G, the battery life can very easily go through an entire day. There's also stamina mode, which extends the battery life, or a low battery mode, and you can also use various things. As you can see from the battery usage chart, it does last easily through an entire workday. So I'm actually really impressed with the battery life of the Xperia Z2. To conclude, the Sony Xperia Z2 is pretty much the best phone that you can buy right now. Sony has finally made a no compromise device. Build quality is fantastic. It really feels solid. The design is really nice, and you get it in black, white, and a nice shade of purple, as you can see. Sony's only area of critique with the Z1 was the screen, and they fixed that with the Xperia Z2. The screen is really nice. It's still waterproof. It's still somewhat dustproof, and the camera is the best camera you can get on Android at the moment right now. Of course, that being said, I kind of wish it was slightly more slimmer, maybe lighter, but the fact that that's the only thing that I can find wrong with the Xperia Z2 does kind of show what a great phone it is. In terms of specs and performance, it's really fast. There's no slowdowns at all. Battery life is really good. The 3 GB of RAM means you can keep all your apps running in the background with no problems or slowdowns. Seriously, this is my favorite phone right now, and I can't think of a reason not to recommend this phone, and that's the first time in a long time that I've said that about a phone. So the only thing that comes close to the Xperia Z2 is Sony's own Xperia Z1. Of course, it doesn't have as good as a display as the Z2, and the processor on the Z2 is slightly faster than the one on the Xperia Z1. There's also a huge price difference. The Z1 is priced much lower than the Z2 at this point. So if you want the best camera on an Android phone out there, you can get the Z1 as well. Looking at other flagship phones nowadays, the HTC One looks pretty good in comparison to the Z2, but the camera isn't as good as the Z2, though in terms of specs it's basically almost exactly the same phone. So between the HTC One and the Z2, you have to choose between a really awesome camera or slightly better, more metallic build quality. I would personally pick the Z2 over that comparison. The only better camera out there right now is the Nokia Lumia 1020, which does a much better job, but it runs Windows Phone, so if you're looking at that point of view, you have a lot of things that you'll have to sacrifice if you move from Android to Windows Phone as well. At the end of the day, the Xperia Z2 is just frankly the best phone you can buy right now. Sure, it's a little big, but you get used to using it very well. It's really fast, and all in all, I have no complaints about this phone at all, and that's huge considering how much we love to talk about phones. As always, guys, if you have any questions about the Xperia Z2, do check out our post over on unleashthephones.com, and of course, if you have any questions about the Xperia Z2, do let me know right in the comment section below.